Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I decided to sit down and film my labor and delivery story. A lot of you were very interested in hearing about this, and I do want to say I apologize for not putting a lot of content on my YouTube channel the last several months. I think the last video I did was in December, which was a very long time ago. I just got to be so busy with teaching and just being pregnant and going through week by week with that. And so I just kind of put my channel to the side for a while, but I decided to come back and do some of these kinds of videos now that I am a mom. And I know a lot of you were interested in hearing about my labor and delivery story, Channing's birth story. So I know that I love watching those kind of videos on YouTube. So I thought that I would go ahead and share mine. So if you are interested, then just keep watching. All right, so I'm going to start from the very beginning. So it was Wednesday, May 3rd, and it was a normal day. For those of you that don't know, I am a 4th grade teacher. So I went to school that day feeling fine. I was exactly 35 weeks pregnant that day, feeling good. Didn't really have any issues up to that point, and so I went to work that day. And it's funny because my co-workers at school threw me a baby shower that morning because, of course, I was 35 weeks pregnant, still had 5 weeks to go. That baby shower had been planned for a couple of months, so had that baby shower that morning before work, and it was so nice. Got a lot of great gifts, and that was just a really good time. I went through the school day, taught okay, and then it got to be towards the end of the school day, I had to leave just a little bit earlier, right when the bell rang, because I had my weekly prenatal appointment. Like I said, I was feeling fine, and I got to my doctor's office, checked in, and went through all of the normal things that you go through right when you get there. The nurse took my blood pressure, and she didn't tell me what it was, but she said that it was pretty high. I didn't really think anything of that. I'm a pretty anxious, nervous person in general, and blood pressure has always been a thing that I get nervous of being high, so I feel like that makes it even worse when you get it checked. So I didn't really think anything of it. She didn't share with me what my blood pressure was, but she did say it was pretty high. So she said, we'll check it again in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and have your doctor come in and, go through your normal appointment with you. So my doctor came in, and we listened to Channing's heartbeat. He was doing fine. Everything checked out fine. And then she decided to take my blood pressure again because she had heard that it had been high. So she went ahead and took it, said that it was very high. And I don't think that she told me what it was either. If she did, I can't remember what it was. But she was pretty concerned with how high it was. So she immediately thought it would be best for me to go ahead and head over to the hospital, which is connected to my doctor's office, and just have them check me out. Just since I was pregnant, obviously having high blood pressure, especially while being pregnant, is very risky and very scary. So that all happened pretty fast. I was probably in the doctor's office for maybe less than 10 minutes before they brought up a wheelchair for me and had me sit in the wheelchair, and one of the nurses walked me down to the hospital. And at that point I was thinking, okay, like I wasn't really freaked out at that point because like I said, I felt fine, I felt normal, but I was kind of feeling a little anxious, just kind of worried in a way, like what was going to happen, what my night was going to look like. I came here thinking this was just going to be a weekly doctor's appointment and I was going to be able to go home. So we get to the hospital, and they take me back to a room. They have me change into a gown, and the nurse went ahead and took my blood pressure there. I was laying on a bed. She took my blood pressure, and that's when I found out that it was 180/120, which is so unbelievably scary high. they were saying, we're surprised you're not having like a seizure right now. Like that's how high it is. And again, I felt normal. I wasn't like dizzy. I didn't have headaches. Like I didn't have any symptoms of someone that would have that high of blood pressure. So at that point, the nurse is, you know, going back and forth, talking with the doctor, what our next steps should be. I went ahead and called my husband because he had just gotten off work. He was just thinking that I had my normal doctor's appointment. So I called and told him that they admitted me to the hospital. I told him about my blood pressure being high, and he was like, do I need to come? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you probably should come. So he ended up coming. I called my mom. We told a lot of like our close immediate family kind of what was going on so they could be praying for us. So then an ultrasound tech came in and gave me an ultrasound just to check on Channing, make sure that he was doing okay, and he was. And I remember her saying there, because I said, can you tell me about how much he weighs? And she said, well, according to our ultrasound, it looks like he's weighing about 8 pounds. And I was shocked. I'm thinking I'm only 35 weeks pregnant. I already have like an 8-pound baby in me. Like I was like, what in the world? But she checked him out. She said he was healthy and normal and everything was going okay with him. But the nurses, you know, were still continuing to check my blood pressure. It was still very, very high after, I think maybe at least an hour or so. And that's when they told me, you know what, to be safe, we're going to go ahead and induce you tonight. I immediately, my husband was there at that point, and we looked at each other just wide-eyed, like, okay, like totally unexpected, nervous, scared, excited. I mean, just so many emotions hit us there right at once because we still thought we had 5 weeks left. We didn't think that waking up that morning that all of this would have happened and I would be admitted to the hospital and induced, you know, to have him that night. So the nurse went ahead and put an IV in me. They wheeled me over to the labor and delivery rooms, and I believe I was induced around 9 o'clock that night. At that point, a lot of our family and close friends knew what was going on. My mom was there with me. My mom and I are really close, so I wanted her in the room with me. My husband was there. But the funny thing is, it wasn't really funny. It was kind of stressful. We were planning to pack our hospital bags that coming weekend. So we had nothing packed. So my husband and my mom came to our house. I kind of gave my husband a list of things that I wanted packed. And so he and my mom came home to our house and packed a hospital bag for me. And they stopped and got something to eat. My husband said he was just full of emotion and so much nerves that I think they went through like Taco Bell and he only ate like 2 tacos and he had barely eaten anything all day. And so he said he just could barely keep anything down. He was just so nervous. Got an epidural around midnight and I was very scared to get that. I'm not a person that loves needles or shots or anything like that. Not that anyone loves to get them, but I hate stuff like that. I hate getting shots. I hate needles. So that was always the thing when I was pregnant. Like I knew that I wanted an epidural, but I was always very scared to get one. They told me, the anesthesiologist told me that it would feel like a bee sting. And I don't feel like I've ever really been stung before. So that didn't really help me with knowing what it would feel like. But it wasn't as bad as what I was thinking. And I knew that something as quick as what an epidural, you know, is, that it would take away my pain and I wouldn't have these severe contractions anymore. So I went through it. It wasn't as bad as what I thought. I would definitely get it again. So that happened around midnight and I laid back down and I was able to rest a little bit and feel very comfortable at that point. I wasn't having the severe contractions anymore. I felt very numb, very, very relaxed. and my epidural worked great. I know some people say that theirs wears off or theirs never ended up working. Mine worked great, so don't let those other, stories scare you. Mine worked just fine, and they always told me if I needed more that they could give it to me. It's after midnight at that point. It's now, early morning of Thursday, May 4th, and my husband and my mom are in the room with me. They're, sleeping on couches next to me as best as they can. I'm trying to get some sleep, but I don't feel like I was ever in a huge deep sleep. And, especially with the nurses coming in, every so often to check on me, check how much I was, dilated, and checking my blood pressure. My blood pressure was still very high. They ended up putting me on blood pressure medicine, which I'm still on right now. It's called Betalol. They put me on that medicine, so they had to keep up with giving me that, and just checking me throughout the night. It got to be around maybe a little bit before 9-ish when my doctor came in. They checked me again to see how much I was dilated, and I think from about 2 o'clock to a little bit before 9, or that 8 o'clock hour, I had stayed at a steady 7. So for 6 hours or so, I hadn't progressed. I was still at a 7. As they were checking, they could feel his head. He was head down, but his head was turned kind of sideways. So they were trying to rotate his head to where he could, eventually, move his way down even better. But his head just wasn't moving from being, stuck kind of sideways. And just with, how little I was progressing at that point, they thought it would be best, especially with my blood pressure still high. They thought, I'd been in labor for almost 12 hours, and they thought it would be best to go ahead and give me a C-section. That is something that I was very nervous for. I know that it's always a chance to have a C-section. It was always something I was very scared of throughout my entire pregnancy, because I know that it can happen. I was very much wanting a natural birth. Natural in the way that, he would have came out vaginally, but that did not happen. And so at that point, I told myself, you know what? I have been in labor for almost 12 hours. I knew that I was going to be having a baby soon either way. And so at that point, I was just super excited to get him out and meet him. And so I was like, there's nothing I can do, and this is what it is. I know that I'm going to be able to do it, and I'll be fine. So they came in, they prepped me, they gave me, I don't know all this hospital stuff, to be honest, but they gave me the good, numbing stuff to where, it's way better than an epidural, and, let me, get numb before they wheeled me back to the operating room. And so it got to the point where I literally could feel nothing. Seriously, I have never felt that numb in my whole life, just, really from like here down. It's just, I could not move my legs, could not move anything. It was just the most bizarre feeling. But they gave my husband his scrubs, and, at that point I was really sad because my mom had spent the whole night in the waiting room with me, and, I had always envisioned her being in the room with me, her on one side, my husband on the other side, as I gave birth. That's just how I always pictured it, and I always wanted my mom there with me, but she was unable to come back with us. It just had to be my husband only. So I had to say goodbye to her as I got wheeled back, which was sad to me because I wanted her there, but my husband came with me, and I just remember feeling so, like, I just couldn't believe that it was happening. Like, I'm about to have major surgery. I'm about to have my baby. It was just so surreal feeling. So we get back to the operating room. They lift me, from my bed to the operating table, which is also a very weird feeling because you're so numb. Like I said, I couldn't move my legs, couldn't move anything. So they physically, these people around you have to lift you up and move you over, which is so weird. But yeah, that was around, I got wheeled back at 9 o'clock. Once they prepped me, got ready, they asked me, I remember them asking me if I could feel certain things just to make sure that before they made the incision that I was completely numb and wouldn't feel a thing. I think it was some sort of instrument that they laid like right here on my shoulder and asked if I felt that, and I said yes. And then they kept going, further down, and they got to the point where they were, near where they were going to make the incision and asked if I could feel anything, and I said no, I don't feel that at all. So I was back there around 9, and he was born at 9:49 a.m. So Channing James is his name. He was born at 9:49 a.m. and my husband was filming. He was right next to me. He was filming, so we have it all on video. It's so weird to see, but he was born at 9:49, and they lifted him up over the curtain where I was laying, and the second they lifted him up over to look at me and so I could see him, he started peeing. It started peeing, and it got some on my face, and my daughter was like, "Oh, sorry," and she pulled him away, and I started laughing. I mean, it was so crazy to think that he was here, and so I got just a quick look at him, but they took him right away. He weighed 7 pounds 5 ounces, which is definitely better than hearing the 8 pounds that the ultrasound tech had originally told me the night before. But still, 7 pounds 5 ounces for 35 weeks. I mean, I can't imagine going 40 weeks and how big of a baby he would have been. But he was 7 pounds 5 ounces. He was 19 and a half inches long. He was perfect. I mean, literally perfect. They, took his footprints and all of that fun stuff. And, if you've had a C-section before, you know that you have to wait and be in there. They have to, close you all back up, and you have to be wheeled to a recovery room for a little while. So that's what I did. And I remember feeling so weird. Like, all throughout my pregnancy, or throughout at least the last half, I had like restless leg syndrome so bad. That feeling where you feel like you constantly have to like shake or move your leg. I had that feeling like right after I had him, I remember feeling like I couldn't move my legs still, and I needed someone to just move my feet or move my legs up and down. It was like, because I physically couldn't do it. So I remember asking the nurses in there if they could lift my legs, and I was like trying to like move my arms. It was just so weird. But they moved me to the recovery room where I was, and I still felt like I just needed to constantly move, and it was weird because the medicine hadn't quite wore off yet, so I was still really, really numb. But yeah, after just a short time in the recovery room, they wheeled me back to my room in labor and delivery, and that's when they had told me that and they had warned me of this, that because Channing was 5 weeks early, that they would have to thoroughly examine him and check him out, just because he was so early. They're not done developing at that early, and so they had to check his lungs and all that stuff. And that's when we were told that he was having trouble breathing on his own. His lungs weren't obviously fully developed, and so they moved him to the NICU there at the hospital and hooked him up to all these machines to make sure that he was okay. And I think it had been, I know it was afternoon at that point, but I still hadn't really got to see him or hold him yet. So after a few hours, I know it was in the afternoon, they wheeled me back to the NICU, and I got to do skin to skin with him. They laid him across my chest. He was hooked up to a lot of things. I know, something to help him breathe. He had lots of things on his chest and stuff like that. But I just stayed in my bed since they had wheeled me there, and they just kind of laid him on my chest, and I was able to just, pat him and be with him. I didn't really get to look at his face much, but, just the feeling of him on me finally was such an amazing feeling. Like, it still felt so surreal. Like, this is my baby. Yesterday I had no clue that he was even going to be here at this time, and now he's here in my arms. It was just so unbelievable. So I got to hold him for maybe 10 minutes or so before they needed to, you know, put him back and make sure that he was still getting the treatment that he needed, and I needed to be able to recover. So I went back to my room, and so that was a Thursday. He was born on a Thursday. We had the NICU team come in and talk with my husband and I several times throughout the day, just kind of his progress, how he was doing, and you know, he was sick. We didn't really know how sick he was, and I will get to that, but he needed a lot of help. He was just underdeveloped internally, you know, with his lungs, and I still have these videos of him where, you know, you can just see him hooked up to these machines, and just, you know, his stomach is just pumping as much as it can, you know, on his own. So he needed a lot of help with that. But I think it was the next day, the next morning, they came and told us that they thought it would be best to transport him to a hospital that was still in that same branch of where I delivered, but 30 minutes away. And they said that they have an amazing NICU in that hospital, and told us that he would receive much better care there than he would here. They just had a bigger level nursery for the care that he needed, and thought it would be in his best interest and our best interest that he went there. And so that was kind of hard for us because you know, I was still there recovering. I hadn't really been able to spend that, you know, mother-baby time with him. So, and now they were telling me that they were needing to transport him 30 minutes from me. So that was really hard to hear. And my husband and I, you know, said, you know, we want him to get better. We want him to get the care that he needs. So if that's where he needs to be, that's where he needs to be. So they, right before they transported him, at that point, you know, he was still hooked up to a lot of machines and needed, you know, a lot of work to help him. So he was in an intubator at that time, and so they wheeled him in, and that was one of the hardest things to see your little baby, you know, 24 hours old in an incubator and needing all of this help. And so I was able to open the doors and put my hand in and just kind of rest it on his arm. And that was so hard. I mean, it was like, looking back on it, it was, I would never wish that upon any mom. It is one of the saddest things to see your baby leave you when you just gave birth to them 24 hours ago. But I knew in my heart that God would give him strength and give us strength, and that he would pull him through, and I wanted him to get the care that he needed. So we knew in our hearts that he needed to go, as hard as it was, but we wanted him to get better. So they transported him, and so I was stuck there in the hospital. He was there. That was a Friday morning, and my husband was able to travel, drive 30 minutes away and see him. He would FaceTime me, which was nice. While I was still recovering in the hospital, he would FaceTime me. So I was able to see Channing in the NICU where they had transported him. But it was still very, very hard. So we spent several hours that Sunday in the NICU with him, and having to leave was the hardest thing. And having to go back to the hospital that I was in, because I technically hadn't been released yet. They just gave me like a 4-hour pass. So I had to go back to the hospital, but then the next day on Monday, I was finally released. I'd been there since Wednesday. So it was, you know, several days in the hospital and just a whirlwind of every bit of emotion. So I was able to finally go home, but it was a weird feeling. I went home, but I went home without my baby, which again is something I would never wish upon anyone, but it happens, and you don't think that it's ever going to happen to you. But we went home, and Channing spent 18 days total in the NICU. He honestly progressed so much. We and the team there, the nurses there were amazing. They would call and give us updates all the time. We called ourselves often and wanted to check on him and how he was doing. We drove there every single day and visited him for 18 days straight, and spent hours with him. And each time we would leave and come home without him, it was so hard because we just longed for him to be home with us. And but each day he progressed. He did really well. There were never any scary moments at any of that time. We never got any scary phone calls that he had declined or didn't progress in the way that he needed to. Each day was always a good report, I feel like, which, made us feel really good that, it was one day closer to him coming home. Finally, on May 23rd, he was able to come home with us. It was the best day ever. I had a little onesie with his name on it that I had been planning to bring him home in the hospital in. Obviously, ever since he was born, didn't think that we would have to wait 18 days to be able to wear it, but he finally was able to wear it. And drive home with us in the car, in his car seat. And it was so amazing to finally have him home on that day. And now he is a healthy, happy 11-week-old baby, and my husband and I are just so in love with him. I mean, it's just so fun at night just being able to sit there with him and play with him. He's starting to smile so much now, and I mean, looking at him now, you would never think that he was, considered a preemie baby, or never thought that he was in the NICU or anything like that. I mean, he is healthy. He weighs about almost 13-ish pounds now, and he's 23.5 inches long, and he is just perfect in every little way, and we are so in love with him, and are just so thankful that he came out of what he did, and that God answered our prayers. So we are loving life with him and cherishing every single day. So that is my labor and delivery story. I hope that it was detailed enough for you guys, and that you enjoyed it. Like I said, I love hearing other birth stories and other labor and delivery stories. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed this. I plan to do more videos. I don't want to go another 6 months without doing a video, but if you guys have any suggestions on any videos that I should do next, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you would like to see. I will do more makeup tutorials. Anything that you guys would like to see, please let me know, and I will try to do my best with the baby at home to film and do that stuff. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.